Good evening and welcome to the January 2024 episode of Recordando, the virtual monthly poetry series with a few friends who join on a regular basis, who all happen to be poets and lovers of words and of each other in a sense, because we've been rolling this stone for quite a while. I feel like some of us have um, become adhered to each other in a really comfortable way. It's a cozy space we're co-creating, and here we are, keeping it going in the year 2024. The theme for today is help me with the Spanish, Lorraine. Recordando todo lo que me hace loca, loco, LOCX o ampersand.
LOCX.
LOCX. LOCX.
Ampersand that.
So yes, remembering the work, remembering the things that make me feel like I'm off track or angry, upset, frustrated, irritable, overwhelmed. It's hitting me all at once. I give up, or damn it, you can't make me give up. Type work. I'm going to read a few pieces from a book. I just purchased this because I had to buy my own contributor copy.
I have that.
Oh, okay. And some of the work is out. I mean, it's not outdated, but I mean, we're kind of, we're in COVID.
Post-COVID.
Yeah, we're in COVID, you know, 0.2 or whatever. I just got my booster a few weeks ago, so okay. I'm gonna read, I'll just read one right now, if that's okay with you. This one's titled Different Kind of Dinner. And all the poem, I have 4 poems in this anthology. They're all about, I'm a little off kilter. I'm a little off. Different kind of dinner. We try to figure out what to eat when we're mourning the dead. We concoct recipes for revolution, but forget that we're out of salt because we're tear deprived and sweat it out through our pores from July Texas stomp chanting and marching the path to some kind of tasty liberation that I am trying to cook in my poverty-line kitchen, too. I make some kind of dinner using what I have on hand, some crunchy cabbage, some cardamom, the rage within, the salty words. Add cracked black pepper, leftover onion I chopped to pieces last night when the radio news needed another reason to make me cry. Such a good dish. After the mural party and fist bumping the man who dialed 911 and got the police to do deadly deeds he'll always regret, well, there has to be a soup to purify, maybe sanctify my ugly cry as I crack the hard shell of a boiled egg. It matches my resilience. See how it relents when we need to soften to allow a new and decent reset to sit down to a different kind of dinner someday. So I needed it to, yeah.
I like that one.
A lot of frantic energy in that, which that year 2020 was chock full of franticness. Ken Sigue, who wants to go next?
I was just going to
Aligned with the theme or not?
I was just going to comment that I was reading somebody else's book of poetry that they wrote in that same period of time. And I did find myself back in that time again through reading that poetry. And I think it's important that we don't forget. I mean, there was even a lot of promise of things maybe getting better, partially because we all were going through this together before it all got polarized and politicized and blown to shit. But anyway.
Well said. Yeah. It's like, what is it that Freud said? That his goal was to help people move from utter misery to ordinary unhappiness. So I think we've moved ourselves from, as much as we can, from, that utter misery to regular run-of-the-mill unhappiness. And that's pretty sad that we've settled too many people. Just that reset didn't last very long, you know.
Yeah.
Like that reset in New York after 9/11, where everyone was friendly for a couple months. Like extra friendly, like said hello on the streets and stuff like that, rather than ignoring you or accosting you. I could read my piece. I had chosen a couple, but I could switch and read my piece that's sort of written during sheltering, which did make everybody crazy in some ways, that's for sure. It takes a couple minutes, but it's got 4 little sections. Is that okay? Seem okay?
Of course, yes.
So this was I could have even read this before because it's one of my favorite uh, um, poems
I
in
love that
Unit of
book.
Agency. So, and I occasionally do read it. Um, the last sentence in it has the word samaras, which not everyone knows. A samara, is one of those whirligig seeds that flutters down from trees, from elm trees and so forth. Those are called samaras. Um, Really a beautiful word, and I use it occasionally since I learned it. So this was written about 10 months into sheltering by myself in my apartment, which meant, at that point, the view for actually, I wrote these slightly, they weren't all written at the same time. They were written sort of successively over a little period of time. And so the view from my apartment. I look out my window at the sad world and realize that it's not sad at all. I am. People are. But the world is not. This is something that I learn every day and forget every day. It's all part of the story that we tell ourselves over and over in our sleep. It's the story of how sadness fell in love with the world and what happened next, of how all the trees lost their leaves one day and the world shrugged it off, while sadness spent all winter knitting them scarves, of how we forget again and again because we aren't real. We are the dream. We fade. And of who comes along and falls in love with the dream and what happens next. I look at my screen and the pixels become needles that slash through my retinas with animate force. Inside my brain, they build a new colony of glass-like obelisks in a prismatic maze. I stagger through, daggered and sliced until I find a cold cement corner to rest in. I curl up there, shivering, until the disorientation settles and I become comfortable. Now I feel ready for anything. I climb the sleek razors out from the screen and look at the world that's always held danger and salvos and glee, even as primordial seas indifferently bash cliffs to clay. Or or are they indifferent? Are they any different from the hawking legions, stampeding their screens with fear of the flesh, sharpening them into blades? I look at the news and see capitalism eating itself from the inside, preparing to sacrifice humanity to save its cankered hide. The opening credits of Metropolis roll as the bunkered wealthy, gorged on ecstasy and brie, barter slave survival for their roast pork. Armies march down our streets, shooting everyone for fun. I learn there's no immunity to bullets. The song of power saws whirring everywhere melds in my dreams with crashing cars and the roar of whole cities on fire. I wake to find I haven't woken. I sleep hungry and waiting for the tanks to deliver old bread and momentary stimulus. After that, I lie back down in the dark, unsure whether my labored breathing is the result of a panic or a virus the size of a fat politician sitting on my chest. I grab my phone, see it still has 17%, and wonder if I should reach out to someone. Instead, I look at the news. I look in the mirror and see the eyes I've always had. Same eyes, same size, maybe a little more blurry and bloodshot, but mine, whatever that means. I see my face, whatever that means. Maybe the face that others see, and maybe not, who can tell? I suspect that the mirror holds my face at every age, and I see them all at once, unable to separate the stony edifice that the flower lady sees, or the one that the checkout guy sees, or all the infinite others. And I see my infinity beyond skin, the spaceless force that lives us all at once, and endless as the duck's eye of eternity. Of course we are inside each other. Please don't be afraid. As rain falls and roots drink, I rejoice from stem and leaf, for we are all wonder. We are all embraced. We are all of every age, into the grave, into the soil, into the flesh, into our ancestors, sailing like samaras into the wind, into the solar stream. The view from my apartment.
Wow. Well, and what is that in again?
Unit of agency.
Okay.
Mhm. The one I like the cover of this one. It's
Yeah.
a photo I took of the crumbling remains of the warden's house on Alcatraz,
Ooh,
with the being able to see the world through it.
I don't have that one, so I'm gonna have to buy it now.
It's my pissed off lefty poems, sort of. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Anyway.
thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
We had
I-
time to really discuss what we discuss and describe.
mhm. I feel like a lot of the stuff in that poem anyway still makes me nuts. It's not just all COVID related, a little bit of it was, but a lot of it's the frustrations we have with capitalism in the world, and
I was happy to not be able to contribute to capitalism as much because I wasn't out there spending money. And the the year before, I remember very palpably how I I struggled to be able to have, even like $5 or $10 to go have a beer and pretzels, to meet a friend. Like, hey, we're gonna meet up at this bar, and like, yeah, I value your companionship, but that means I gotta spend money. And I don't know if I have that, or I want it, I'm, on a budget. So when the pandemic happened, we weren't out at all because the restaurants and the bars were closed. And I thought, wow, this is so great. I'm not contributing to capitalism. And I love that. And I don't have to feel embarrassed about that, about not being able to keep up with the Janeses. And and then biking, when we had the curfew and people couldn't be out after 8, and a lot of people didn't even bother driving around in the evenings, and I would bike, and I could bike in these big, you know, uh, avenues and boulevards where usually there's a lot of traffic, and I could just take the full road going
Mhm.
downtown, and that was so wonderful. And the air quality was, as we were hearing, was much improved because of lack of car traffic on our nation's streets. I was living for that and loving it, the quiet of that, where you could hear more of nature.
Mhm.
But I did see, speaking of trees, Richard, I did see some death in trees that really kind of broke my heart. A favorite tree of mine that I always saw on the way to work, going through
Mhm.
a park, Trinity Park, was completely wrecked. Like, I don't know what happened to it. I'll never know. Was it struck by lightning? I mean, it was just eradicated completely down to the ground.
Wow. Wow.
And I made a video poem about it just for myself, but it really shocked me, and I took it as a horrible sign, a bad omen. Oh my gosh, I was feeling very unlucky. You know, of all the trees in the forest, why that one had to have been completely, and it was a dead tree. It was already dead, which is probably why it broke over. It fell over and shattered, you know, broke apart.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was easy to take things very literally and personally during that time because we had time to make those metaphors for ourselves, about ourselves and our lives. That's a sign of vulnerability, and it's a sign of not feeling like all is well inside.
It's also a mindset of, it's a mindset of that recognizes that everything is filled with omens. I mean, that's always true. That there's omens everywhere. It's just that we don't, when we're all wrapped up in our normal life, we don't notice it as much.
Yeah, if
Anyway,
we're chewing a new pack of gum and just bought some fancy shoes and going to a party, you're not going to notice the shadow too much. Less inclined to. This is a brief one I'm going to read, also from the same collection. It's called Off the Dead. And this is, yeah, Off the Dead. A bloated cat, a stiffened armadillo, a flattened squirrel that needs to be scraped up as I bicycle along the insecure streets today, last week, a month ago, I'm not sure when. I try to get my mind off the dead or dying and only find it again, and once more, on my restless ride in the city of groaning spring. I circle back. Could that wiry piece be a tail, and the bones withered on the black top be formerly white? Let's call it a baby possum, just to get the notes wrapped up for the day. And oh, a stiff baby bird on the sidewalk just outside the marketing firm. No funeral for her either.
I
Just
think I know that baby possum.
cataloging the death, and it just, you know, as much as you know, the streets were car free, I was able to see, I mean, I happened to see all this, you know, muerte.
Mhm.
So I thought, oh my gosh, Tammy, cheer up. How, like, what's it gonna take? And I'm like, I know what it'll take. A new president, new this, more vaccines, more people who believe in vaccine. Like, okay, well, let's just bike around and feel well, morbid again. That seems easier. Um, Anyone else like to read or share something that's coming to mind?
Well, I had a dream last night and 2 nights ago that I'm still working on, where I was in medieval Europe and I was illiterate and there was no technology. And I was aware that my mind was working differently because there's no technology and the, I didn't know how to read, and being literate as opposed to not being literate, you have different brain. And when I woke up, I was trying to get it all written down in my dream journal, uh, and I think I have enough to be able to get back there, but I need to. It's kind of hard to put into words what it is to not be able to put anything in writing, you know. But it's a problem that I want to solve, a writing problem. How would I think if if reading wasn't part of my life? I mean, you can see how important reading is to me.
Mhm.
Of course. Yeah. The irony of that, you were shown the possibility of not being a literate person, while you're in you have capacity in this lifetime, in this century, to be a well-read person. I'm curious, not this is a rhetorical question, of course. Why was it necessary for you to have that dream?
Well, that's another.
What made it necessary for you to have that dream?
Uh, I've been researching my Enneagram type. I don't know if you know anything about the Enneagram, but my Enneagram type is the observer. It's uh, and bringing knowledge in without getting it out again is the problem that I'm finding. So I think the dream has something to do with that.
Hmm.
It's and in a weird way, it may be telling me that I need to write more because I need to. I have insights that need to be shared, and I need to get them into a written form where I can share them. I
Even
think
if you're not sure what they are at the moment.
right. It's a like I said, it's part of my type is I see things as problems, and so now I have this new problem. How do I get into words this way of thinking that I was exposed to in my dreams? So
That's kind of fascinating. I mean, the idea of the dream itself and the state of mind is, I had a similar experience once, but really not anything. I actually don't know. Don't know if I ever really recount this very often. Um, and I must have been in my 20s maybe, and I took some mushrooms at a party, and I don't know why, because I'd taken them before, and why they did this to me, but partway through the party, I no longer could understand language, and it became really apparent to everyone there, many of whom I knew. It was that I had no idea what they were saying, and there was something wrong with me, and I was responding in noises when people would speak to me, and I don't remember much of the trip. I remember being confused, and that I wanted to be away from all the mammals that were making noise all around me. And so I kind of shut myself in a little closet, sort of little tiny room, for a while at the party, which of course made everyone even more alarmed. But my boyfriend was there, and I remember that he came in and he sort of figured out what was going on after a little bit. I'm not quite sure how, and let me be for a while. And then when I could think in words again, I came out. Um, but I never tried to describe that. I'm not sure I could. It was kind of hard to sort of describe it as it was happening, because you don't have words to describe it. It's just feeling.
yeah, part of the dream was that I was experiencing nature and without words, without concepts, without labels. It was just the tree that was immediately there was communing with me,
Mhm.
and the squirrel was communing with me, and I didn't need words. And if there were a lot of people talking, that was in the first dream. There were people talking, and they were praying, and I knew there was something wrong with them, the words they were using to address God. It's like, no, God's not like that. These words aren't what are necessary right now. Anyway,
I've been kind of binge watching the last season of Reservation Dogs, and there was a episode I watched the other day that was set, it was kind of a flashback scene. It was set in the time of the boarding schools for young Native American kids, and in I mean there were several scenes that were in that location and time period. But it took me a minute to realize when some of the nuns, because this particular school was run by Christian nuns, um, whenever they were speaking, I didn't understand them at first. I thought they were speaking maybe English with a Irish accent. But then I realized, no, this is a made up, this is something the production staff decided to do, is to have these characters speak in a non-understandable, incomprehensible language that sounds guttural, like the way that if you didn't know English, how you think how English would sound. And I try to imagine that, even though I'm pretty adept at this language. I do try to imagine what it might sound like if I didn't understand English, how it would sound. Just the way I hear when people are speaking Mandarin or
Right.
another language of China, I can tell that's that's a language of China that's being spoken. I thought that was pretty witty of the production staff to do for that episode in order to
It's kind of
impart
great.
that sense of like, boy, those people are speaking some crazy language that makes no sense. I have hide nor tail ability. I have no way of interpreting that gosh awful guttural. Um, and that's pretty fascinating to me that we have kind of a built-in like this, we get angsty. Like I just now got angsty. Like my stomach just started turning after I
Mhm.
spoke that way because it was so nonsensical. It made no sense to me. So if somebody was speaking in a way that I didn't understand and could not interpret, I had no interpreter to help me, and those people were being mean to me, cruel to me, how horrible would that be?
I mean, we hear people we don't understand all the time. I do it for sure. Out here, there's so many languages spoken on the street. I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of East Africans in the neighborhood, for instance, that speak Eritrean, and it's a beautiful sounding language, but it doesn't make any word sense to me. I lived in a apartment, I don't know, in San Francisco in the late 80s, I guess, doesn't matter. And there were like 12 apartments in this old mansion, really, this old building, big old house. And almost all of them were these, I think that if my memory's correct, Cambodian families. And there are a bunch of, middle-aged and older people. And the women would gather in the hallways and talk, I don't know, gossip or whatever they'd be all talking in a little group. And I just remember walking by them one day with my roommate and saying, you know, that's what we sound like to the cat. But I also recently came across, and I had to laugh at this, and I didn't make a note of what it was, but it was like I want to say it was like, it's European. I want to say it was a German sort of like rock or pop rock band or something. It might have been Northern European though, who had a song that was fake English, and so they're singing, but it was the same kind of thing where it was like this is what English sounds like to their ears, but they don't know any English, and I had to laugh at that too. Um, and
Yeah, anything to put the mirror back on ourselves in a way that kind of puts us in our place is okay with me as an American. I have a question for you, Richard, about your dream. I mean, not your dream, your dream state, after that party. And well, you were in the closet, you know, to help maybe find a secure space where you didn't have to maybe feel that queasy feeling of not being able to understand your friends. Was there a sudden fading of that phenomena, or did you like fall asleep and then the next morning you understood?
No,
Good
no,
morning.
I don't know how long I was like that, but for maybe an hour or something like that. And I never experienced it any other time. And I don't know why it got set off, you know, by the mushrooms or whatever. Because a bunch of people had had them and nobody else had, you know, anything like that happen. But I do remember that it came back kind of quickly. It seemed like it did. I mean, I was in sort of like a small dark room, like chilling out. And you know, it's in like the chill room of the rave. No, but you know, it was a big dance party and lots of fun people. And I do remember what felt like kind of suddenly thinking in words again, and sort of having a brief few moments where I was aware that I was starting to think in words again. Whereas for a while it was just like sensory, and I was not in woods. I mean, I'd taken mushrooms to go hiking at times because you can let go of the conceptions and so forth, but it wasn't that non-language sort of thing I've experienced, you know. But when I'm alone walking in the woods, I'm not necessarily thinking in language, you know. I'm communing with the trees, you know, or whatnot. So
Did you have the urge to explain what happened to your friends that same night, or did you just carry on with the party?
don't remember that. Sorry.
Just curious.
I think I said something to a couple people, if I remember correctly. I mean, yeah, it's funny. This party was at it wasn't at night. I don't know why it doesn't think, I don't think it has anything to do with it, but these were parties that we would have. It was like people who worked a midnight shift at a restaurant, and our manager, who became a very good friend of mine for a long time, owned a little sort of like theater loft in Ann Arbor, that he would do. It doesn't matter, but he had slideshows and things that he would do. And so we would have every so often we would have a Sunday morning party at 6 a.m. And they were called the Holy Redemption parties. And bunch of people would come. In fact, we even had like our favorite customers would get up at 6 in the morning and drop acid to come to our parties. And we would just dance for hours and hours, you know, and yeah, drink grain punch or something. I don't know, whatever we were doing. There was a bunch of them. So that was like during a Sunday morning. Yeah, maybe it was my redemption.
What years were those? I'm just trying to place it into my own
Yeah,
context.
it would have been around 1980, 81,
Okay.
I think. It was, I would say I worked at that place when I got back. Yeah, 81, 82. I worked at that place when I came back from living at Lake Tahoe, and that was pretty much in 1980. So, and then I went back to Ann Arbor, and I didn't go back to school for like 6 months, but I ended up working at this restaurant. I worked there for a few years. So, yeah, we were a wild crew.
And the reason I ask is that in the period right before that, when I was in Atlanta, and it was the same kind of scene. I mean, one of our friends had he worked for Coca-Cola, and he got these big tanks of nitrous oxide, and he was an engineer, and he sort of set up this hookah with all these tubes, and we all sat around in the room and sucked on nitrous oxide, and, and
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 floated. Mhm.
and another, Julio, who's the son of the Colombian ambassador to the United States, was a chemistry. He was a chemistry PhD student at Georgia Tech, and he got together with this Taiwanese chemistry major and came up with an ecstasy formula that wasn't yet illegal, and made all this ecstasy and turned everybody on. We'd have these parties with unlimited ecstasy. We'd get get a piece of toilet paper and put this powder in it because it wasn't in, it was pure. It wasn't in, capsules or anything like that. And we went this little club near Georgia Tech, and and, and he brought a baggie filled with this white powder of ecstasy, and just gave it to everybody in the bar, including the band. And it was George Thorogood and the Destroyers were playing, and and George Thorogood was lying on his back on the dance floor playing slide guitar while he was just totally ecstasy out, and everybody loved each other, and it was just this wonderful scene.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot more to that.
No, what's interesting is about that same time, maybe the year or two after that, in Ann Arbor, also with the same group of people, or some of them, we had a series of MDA parties, and it was not illegal. It was new. Not
Right.
It was pre-ecstasy. It was MDA, not MDMA. It was incredibly strong.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. We used to.
Is this recording? No, I'm joking.
it,
Take me away.
yeah. I bought a mug at the time.
I'll have a technician scramble all of the language so we'll be indiscernible. So we'll sound like the nuns in that
I mean,
episode of Reservation Dogs.
so maybe this is what made us all, crazy. Yeah.
I can't find it.
MDA.
We used to call it May Day. May Day. Today's a May Day. You can tell because the sun sparkles through the leaves of the trees in a certain way.
Well, does anybody have a poem they'd like to read at this juncture in time? Going into the second hour of Recordando, January 2024.
I feel like I don't want to read some of the ones that I chose were were also sort of like pissed off poems, and I don't feel like reading a pissed off poem right now, not after talking about ecstasy.
I'm gonna read one that is still, it's fresh. I need to edit it, but I just want to poke at it a little bit in front of y'all or with y'all, and just want to get y'all thinking about the idea of how we embody a close companion, ex-lover, former lover, good friend, a family member, in the way we move our bodies as a way of honoring them, like a ceremonial gesture, or when you realize at a certain age, like, oh, I think I have the same limp that my grandpa had when he turned 65, that kind of embodiment of a way of being in one's body. Anyway, this is just a work in progress, and here it goes. It was written July 26th, just a week or so after my brother died. Its title Working title is I've Taken on a Little. I was stooping over in my desk chair, peeling off the laminate plastic goo covering the validation code for the gift card Estilo McDonald's that a team member had presented inside a sympathy card. I took note of how I stooped, like a guy might, knees spread, feet solid on the floor, when he's hunched over peeling an apple and winking at his dog. I embodied that bodily style just now, and I decided that is how I am now. I have taken on a little of Ted in my body posture and stance, just like I've taken on Gloria and Zaldua and the impish clutch of Kel Robertson when he had pulled another fast one, a verbal jab, or grabbed your beer, and he had to be gleeful or more like gloatful about it, with his shoulders suddenly hunching as if to smolder a burst of laughter. I've taken that on at times. My cats have seen it when I jest with them, calling them creatures from the Black Lagoon.
It's a great piece.
I remember, thank you, Richard. I remember really falling in love with the powwow experience. I went to my first powwow in Taos, New Mexico in the late 80s. And they have dancing competitions. And it was my first time, so I didn't know how things worked. And I remember the announcer, who sounds a lot like a rodeo announcer. So you know, some of the words sound muffled because of the bad sound system and the feedback, and it's, you know, you're in this huge outdoor space. But some things I could understand. So I remember the announcer calling for all the people who wanted to compete in a round of ceremonial dancing to honor an elder who had passed away recently. And I guess there was either a panel of judges, or maybe it was like an audience approval type of judging thing, where we just, you know, whoever got the most claps or the loudest claps was the winner. And the dancing was phenomenal. It was all males. The elder who had passed away was a male, you know, gendered male. So that's his hetero person. And so I saw the dancer who was like the most flamboyant, flashy, on point, sharp moves, very, you know, well-rehearsed movement. And I thought, well, certainly that person's going to win. I mean, I have good taste in dance, and I think they're great. And then that round ended, and the judging happened, and then the announcer announced who won, and the person who won was not that sharp, young, handsome male dancer. It was somebody else who, as the announcer explained, danced the most like the elder who had passed away. So the competition was judged on the basis of how well you could emulate or imitate the style of the elder's dancing. And I just fell in love with powwow. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the right spirit. That is the right spirit. And if you notice, if you love your dad and you notice you're walking like your dad, that might be a proud moment for you. And that might be a way to acknowledge that your dad still exists, but through your body. And I think that's a beautiful thing to try to capture in a poem. I mean, that was what my poem was attempting. And it was a way also of comforting myself so soon after my brother Ted had passed away.
The description of crouching down like one carving an apple sort of thing was absolutely so spot on. You know,
And winking
in
at a
fact,
dog
mhm.
at the same, you know, there's that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for noticing. And it's about poets also. Like we're really good at, many of us, I'd say, maybe not all of us want to do this, is observe and notice those gestures and physical tableaus.
Mhm.
And it could be like the gesture of a dove flying over a tree. I mean, that's also a gesture.
Mhm. Mhm.
Lorene, you haven't read tonight. Are you still around? Do you want to share something on the mic for us?
Hello, hello. Sorry, I
Hi.
disappeared for a while. I don't know what to share.
Is that because you have a lot to share? Or, I mean, please, just read anything. Don't even worry if it feels like it connects to the theme, because that asserting a theme is just a way of getting some people's minds wrapped around the idea of attending this reading. But yeah, just
Okay.
enjoy yourself. Share what
I'd
you
like to just hear anything, Lorraine. I love
Okay.
hearing you read.
Same.
Thank you, Richard.
No, seriously. Yeah.
Now, let me try to get this document opened up. This poem I wrote when traveling across the Atacama Desert from Argentina to Chile. It's like a 9-hour trip through the desert.
By train?
No, this is by bus.
Hmm.
Tell me a story. Who sat in that yellow stool in the middle of this no man's land? What has that plastic bag seen in its journey skipping across these rough Atacama sands around the base of cinder cones, changing course with the capricious wind? Where has the owner of that blue tennis shoe on the lonesome highway wandered off to?
Mm. I'm
I
one of
want
those
to tell
people that lost a glove. You know, you see a single glove in the street, or single shoe, or single sock. I left my home with two gloves and came home with one. So I contributed to that um to that stockpile of orphaned outerwear.
I feel like bizarre though to see something like that in the middle of a desert.
A
With
blue shoe?
no
Was it a blue shoe, did you say?
Yeah,
Yeah, that is bizarre. You wonder, were they so mad, like, fuck this shoe, and then threw it out the window, or what I mean, yeah, what compels people? I swear.
they say that untold thousands died in that desert
Ooh,
walking, from Bolivia and from Peru and from other parts of Chile to go work in the nitrate mines, and that the whole area is, full of spirits. And I was working on a guidebook of Chile. I wanted to get to Pisagua, which is an interesting town. In several of his poems in Canto General, Neruda writes about Pisagua. At least 11 times in the 20th century, it was home to detention camps for social and political dissidents. And so anyways, I wanted to get there because, it used to be the major shipping port in that area of what is now northern Chile, but at the time it was part of southern Peru. And but nobody had information about how to get there. And so I ended up going with a tour for senior citizens and spending an entire day. We finally get to Pisagua. Half of the people wanted to go to the cemetery, and the other half didn't. And the road was actually blocked by a boulder. And in the cemetery, there is a monument to a mass grave that they found of people who were killed during the Pinochet years. And you can still see the detention camp from the Pinochet years.
How do you spell Pisiwa?
Pisawa,
Pisawa. How do you spell it? Do you mind putting that in the
P-I,
chat? I want to read up on that later. Thank you.
okay. Let me see, where's my, okay.
When I think about those years, you know, and the cruelty of the Pinochet times, I always think of the urban, you know, this, you know, like the big stadium where Victor Jara was taken to, and all, you know, the dissident artists and scholars of that time period. But I never have heard about these rural desert detention centers. I didn't know those existed.
Oh yeah, they were all over the place.
Damn.
But anyways, when
Thank
we
you.
we
Okay.
left from Iquique, traveled north because the turnoff where Pisa was north of Iquique, off of the Pan American. And like when we turned off, there was a young woman hitchhiking. And the bus driver threw a container of stale urine out the door at her. Because, and he explained that there's so many ghosts in the desert that that's what all of the truck drivers and bus drivers and everybody does, just in case what you are seeing is a ghost.
To throw urine.
Yeah.
Sounds
And then like
a hitchhike.
pardon?
Sounds like a terrible place to hitchhike.
Yeah. Well, later on, you know, like when we're in Pisawa, she finally showed up down there. And because she wanted to check it out too, but she didn't know how to get to Pisawa. And so she caught a ride back to Iquique with us, because then the bus driver knew that she was a real breathing human being.
I'm laughing. That just seems really, you know, out of this world to like have to prove that you're alive. But I mean, in a place where maybe the spirits outnumber the humans, yeah, that's something you got to look out for, you know, that you have blood coursing through your veins still.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's really when we were down in Pisawa, there were at that time one hotel and a camping site. And the camping site is right next to the Pinochet what was the Pinochet detention camp. And this couple who was staying there, who stayed there a couple of nights, they said that it was really bizarre at night in that town, because you would hear stuff going on and you would feel stuff, you know. And probably the craziest idea that somebody ever had, there's a building that's painted pink, and it was the police station. And of course, it had torture chambers in it in the basement. And somebody decided to turn it into a hotel.
After the fact.
After the fact, yeah. It's like, who in their right mind would stay in a building that had torture chambers in it?
I don't know.
There's a lot of strange people in this world.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Some sulking goth
Bogota, there's
types. Yeah.
in Bogota, in the Candelaria section of town, which is like one of the oldest sections of town, there is a building that originally was a church and convent. Then during the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was of the internal secret police, and yeah, had the torture chambers in it and everything. And then now, well, the last 20, 30 years, it's been luxury condominiums. And I know several people who have gone to like parties. I mean, movie stars and musicians and everything live in these condos, right? And they said it is the strangest place. It has a vibe in there that is just.
That would be
And
like setting up a Hyatt Regency at Huntsville. No, thank you. But I mean, that this ties in with, you know, remembering those things that make you crazy. I mean, that's just seems incomprehensible that somebody would feel comfortable and confident laying their pillow in a, you know, sleep state of vulnerability in a place where that kind of mayhem and violence and trauma had previously happened. Yucko, not into it myself. Sorry. Take somebody else, not
what are
me.
you thinking about, Jeffrey? You have some interesting looks on your
Yeah.
face.
Well, it's just gosh. I mean, you could see somebody really playing it up. I mean, that there are people out there who pay big money for very weird, strange stuff, and that's what I was thinking about, is that trying to get myself into the head of those people.
Who paid over $1 million to ride a submarine to go see the remnants of the Titanic.
Oh,
You know,
God.
that kind of people. It's, you know, the theme parkification of our world, and people with big bucks and who are not easily fazed by the experiences a dose of mushrooms or meth will give them, you know, just want the next best cheap thrill or expensive thrill.
I feel sorry for the son of, that went with his father. The father really wanted to spend time with his son, and his kid, the mother said that the kid was really hesitant about wanting to go. He didn't want to go, but he felt obliged to because that's what his father wanted.
Yeah, he was maybe 18. I think he would have been, that's it.
No, he was much younger than that.
Oh, okay. Not quite emancipated.
No, he wasn't emancipated yet. What was that? Um, let's see. I'll find it real fast.
Okay.
Oh, that's.
Well, I'm thinking right now of the girlfriend who died last night in LA. There were 3 bodies found unresponsive in a house in LA, and it turns out the 2 males were in the kind of goth techno scene, both Latinx males in their 40s, and then one of them had a partner, and she was, I think, even younger, and she was Asian, Australian. All 3 of them died, and it seems like it's attributable to fentanyl poisoning. And that's made really big news in the underground techno scene as of 10 hours ago. It's like that girlfriend, you know, why did she go along with it? I mean, a lot of girlfriends get involved. You know, they're the ones left holding the bag, driving
Oh,
the
excuse me, you were right. He was 19.
I knew he was at least 18. And there was something ingrained in him about not displeasing his father. I remember thinking about that, how I'll stand up with any person, even 16 and up, if they want to do something against their parents' wishes when their parents might not be of good, sound mind or good judgment. And reading the headlines the way I do, it seems increasingly so that a lot of people gardening children aren't quite of the right mind and judgment. Yeah, that's tragic. Tragic. I love what you shared, Lorraine. Please
Yes.
never,
Thank
don't
you.
hesitate to share. Thank you.
So does anybody have a story of one of those three things?
A story of
The yellow stool or the plastic bag or the blue tennis shoe?
it's weird. It made me. I have a single blue shoe in a poem. Is that weird?
Let's hear
No.
it.
Let's hear it. Yeah.
Well, I just had to look because I was like, don't I have a blue shoe? Well, it's one of the teeth poems. It takes a couple minutes. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah, of course. Can you say the three items again, Lorraine? Blue shoe, and what were the other two?
Yellow stool and a plastic bag.
Go ahead, Richard. Thank you, Lorraine.
Yeah, it's funny because I was actually going to read one of the tooth poems, the one for the tooth that got missing, but I think I'll read this one instead. This is the Tooth of Memory, and that was for a little hard to locate in your mouth, especially like me if you don't have it anymore. Tooth number 20 was the lower left second premolar, so it was right in here. The tooth of memory, tooth number 20. And when I say the number 20, it refers to the character and the tooth. Foraging the Pacific floor, closest to the roiling core of earth, yet hugging the cold mantle, calm and still, sifting animalcules and silt, drifting with the roots of islands, deeper than most fragile life allows, dwells 20, scavenging, snuffling, burrowing a hopeful tunnel through himself. She climbs down a stairway to the cellar of your waking and finds a dim repository lit by flashes you can count on, shifting as the molding artifacts shift in the gathering must. And somewhere, groping, somewhere, there are doorways hidden in dark moss that covet countless passages, winding down to lost treasures lamented. An echo in a hallway reenacts a further room, and a scene of disenchantment plays like a haunting song muffled through a door. Doors stretch out of sight, thrumming murky moments in a fugue. A scent of oranges drifts through. Bird calls reinvent a wild dawn. A long-gone injury twinges long and deep as a birthday song. Echoing trenches, dredging magma and sediment, and reseaming the abyss. Will you can't? Or did you forget the apostrophe? Ruminate. Room in a bottle. Room, fragile room. Room for a day. You're standing all by yourself, shaking, tenuous, gripping the end table, peering over the edge. Mother in the distance, clapping, you grinning like life. Old photographs tumble from an envelope. The causeway looms as a bipartite lobe barking in spring. Thistles grip, and small dogs forage for a bit of luck, a lucky scrap to keep them shored against the northern wind that scuttles flakes of obsidian across the hapless plain, pours sand into the mines, and in you go, grappling for the lodestone. You lie on damp earth watching a meteor shower. You're opening the best gift ever. And you must keep a wholesome map, they say, lest you, chewing on your past like an old cud, be swallowed by a labyrinth of mud. A bee drifts through a field. Will the past give us hunger or feed on us? Does the present sustain or decay? How much do we remember? How present can we be? Where did you see the green door? Room, roomy's traces. Room, rumor of love. Room, scent of faces. Room, movement, room. You're arguing with your first love over a broken glass. You had a blue shoe somewhere. You're on a long-deserved vacation, basking in borrowed time, when a plane hits your house. Violence of the world intrudes. The fragile objects of your past are wiped. What is left? 20. List reaper, pen keeper, elusive enigma, haunting roots wrapped around gems. I know what you're saying, but they linger. Room, room in the ocean. Room under the floor. Room on fire. Room. That's the Tooth of Memory.
Hmm.
They're strange poems. 2005 poems for teeth. Anyway,
Yeah,
everyone was
beautiful
afraid of it
reading.
because
Thank you. Thank you.
it's got a weird Photoshop of my really messed up X-rays on the cover, and I think that's why nobody wanted to buy it. Like, oh,
Tooth poem, what was the number?
well, the tooth number 20 was the name, and it's called The Tooth of Memory. You know, I kept the wisdom teeth, and then I gave every other tooth. I don't even know if you can see this. I gave it every other tooth, sort of like an aspect of human experience. You can probably see a couple of them. I don't know.
Wisdom, numbers, labor, myth.
Yeah. So there's 4 wisdom teeth of wisdom. There were 4 teeth of intuition, and then every other one was singular. And this is actually, well, there's 2. This is one of the table of contents for the book. It actually showed, you can find what tooth is where in the book. I'm obsessive.
And that was before your current tooth problems, right?
No, that was after I'd lost so many teeth that I couldn't enunciate properly for a while. I'm kind of back there now. Anyway. Yeah, this one was the tooth of alert. Haven't used that for a while. Well,
I really loved your reading.
Me too. Thank you for
thanks.
singing. I didn't expect the singing. I love it.
I'm actually starting a project. One of the projects that I have I'm trying to find things ways to increase my income, but I'm going to start a project to record all of my poems because people like it when I read them. And I think I'm going to start a Bandcamp page to like sell audio versions of my poems and my books. I don't know if it'll do much, but
I held on to my dream of releasing my work on vinyl. I love that more than anything. I'll read one more from this COVID collection. It's just showing how my mind was working, which is a lot of run-on sentences and just things were quite a jumble up here. This is called immersive theater. Sorry for that question mark. This is called immersive theater. I have a mother. She is 4'10" and full of grace. Trunk full of food about once a month. My fridge is full. I have a sister who had sepsis in June. Words on a page comfort me. No hospital visit for me and Simon. I trust he's truthful and will vent a little later. Glad I have a nephew, more than a rumor. We Zoomed one time, so I have seen him for real. He and I ate pizza on Barry 3 weeks BC, before COVID.
And now you eat pizza again.
Yeah, and there's more out there. So I'd like to say this has been a beautiful evening, despite my lack of proper and adequate preparation. I do feel forgiven by you guys, and more importantly, accepted by you as companions and comrades in letters, and that's most important to me. So if I've met with your disapproval by not sending out the damn Facebook invite page, well, have a chat with me on a private line or
Didn't
help
meet
me
with
out.
mine.
Or help me out. That would be welcomed. But I expect to get back on track now that maybe the temperatures are settling down a little bit to more reasonable levels. Reasonable for this body, for this aging body, that is. Much love and comfort to those that need it the most on the other side of the planet. Thinking of them without saying all of their names, and because there are so many to be thought of and remembered tonight and tomorrow. Any messages of reminders or announcements anyone wants to make? Richard, do you have anything virtual coming up that we need to know about? Readings, otherwise?
No, I have 2 in person and some in-person workshops, for which I'm grateful.
If someone wants to talk for a minute, I'm gonna look up the call for submissions for About Place Journal, because I think this upcoming issue will be a good one for some of us to consider.
That's
Yeah.
a Weird West one.
It's called Strange West.
Strange West. Yeah, I was just looking at that. I have it printed out, but you should tell the others.
Please submit work to About Place Journal. Submissions are now being accepted until March 10th. And they will accept everything from visual poems and performances, like in video or audio files, experimental stories and essays, and your art classified by no other name than art.
What is the theme this year?
They have 2 issues a year. For this spring issue, it's the West. As we decenter traditional subjects and propagandized histories of this ambiguous region, share with us your witness and protest, your lineages who have lived here longer than the word itself and this country. The West, as we understand it, has never been uninhabited. It's rather lengthy. But have a look at the link, follow the link for information and also bios of the editors. I think it's going to be a strong issue just based on the heft and, you know, the thrust of the call, the language in the call.
And just to clarify, the West, which I've always taken to mean the Western part of the United States, or what we call the West here, that's what they're referring to, rather than Western culture compared to Eastern culture, right?
That's a very good question. Yeah, in lands now known by many as the United States of America, West invokes a fraught mythology of wildness and conquest. Yeah, that. They refer to a couple of, importance of water and resource in South Dakota, while Chicano artists muralized the scar of a border wall with the painting of roses. Yeah. So yeah, focusing on the Western US from whatever point you deem west. No one's gonna hold up a ruler to the map and say you can't submit work.
West of me is San Francisco.
Thank you all for your work and your attention and your presence. And
Thank you for creating this space.
Yes, thank you.
I'm happy, Lorraine, that your internet held up for the
Yeah.
duration. It's a nice treat to have you back again with us.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
loved hearing you read, Lorraine, and next time read more.
Okay.
It's just a request. I'm not making demands.
I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much for your love and sincere presentations of your work. It was really inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead and